What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our ACC football channel. Our 2019 college football schedule previews continue with the Virginia Cavaliers. You can see their schedule on your screen. I'll admit, I was a little skeptical on this team last year. I thought maybe a couple of years ago they were just a one-hit wonder with Ben Kirk at quarterback, but they proved me wrong. Last season, this defense was phenomenal. Bryce Perkins came in at quarterback, played really well for them there. And I think this Virginia team is a serious contender in the ACC Coastal Division. They bring a lot back on defense. Again, a defense that was one of the best defenses in the ACC last season. So I expect them to be good there. Bring back a decent amount on offense, including Bryce Perkins at quarterback. So yeah, I think Virginia is right up there with the favorites in that division. And I think the schedule sets up very nicely for them to potentially win that division and get to the ACC championship. They open up with Pittsburgh on the road. That's going to be a huge game. That will really, I think, set the tone for their season. A win in that game, and they are off to the races. And I think they'll have a really, really good shot at winning that division. A loss in that game, though, I think is going to make it tough. So that, I mean, there's a lot riding on that opening game of the season. They would then face William and Mary, Florida State at home, Old Dominion. Road game against Notre Dame, road game against Miami. There is a bye week in between those two games, but those will be very difficult matchups there. Duke is at home. Louisville and North Carolina are on the road. Georgia Tech, Liberty, and Virginia Tech to close out the season. All three of those games at home. And again, you look at the schedule and you have to say, all right, who is Virginia going to be underdogs against? According to Vegas, I think Notre Dame and Miami, both on the road. Those are going to be games where Virginia is an underdog. Virginia Tech and Florida State are both at home. I don't know what the situation is going to be like at that time, but right now, I think Vegas would favor Virginia in those games. And then that other game is the first one against Pittsburgh. Who would Vegas favor there? That's tough. I don't really know. I don't know if there's any betting lines out for week one or not, but I would probably go with Virginia. So that means they're going to be favored in maybe 10 of their 12 games. The schedule, again, is not that tough, but there are some games on there that could trip them up, like Florida State, like Pittsburgh, like maybe North Carolina on the road. You know, there are some challenges there. But you look through the schedule and you look for the easy wins, the pretty much guaranteed wins. I give them William and Mary. I think they win that game, no doubt about it. It's an FCS opponent, shouldn't be any problem. It's actually a Friday night game, so that is interesting. Maybe that'll be an ACC network game, potentially. So they get that game. That should be a win. And then you look through the rest of the schedule, and you don't necessarily call these guaranteed wins, but they're games that Virginia should win. I realize Old Dominion beat Virginia Tech last year, but I think Virginia will be favored in that game pretty big. And then Liberty. Liberty's not a bad team, but Virginia should be able to win that game. So that gets you to 3 wins, and I think they win all 3 of those non-conference games. The other non-conference game is the game against Notre Dame. So at least they have that on the schedule to maybe boost their resume a little bit. So then you go through the rest of the schedule, and again, the two biggest challenges, the two that jump out to me are Notre Dame and Miami. Those are going to be very tough games to win on the road. I realize Virginia beat Miami last year, but this year on the road, it's going to be a tough matchup. I believe that's a Friday night game as well. So that could be a challenge, but every other game, I like their chances in the rest of these games. I know Virginia Tech has beaten them every year for quite some time, but this could be the year they break through there. North Carolina and Louisville are 2 teams that were bad last year but could be a little better, so you have to watch for those 2 games. They could face a really hungry North Carolina team, so that one scares me a little bit. And then again, that opener against Pittsburgh is going to be tough. It's going to be a big one, and I think, like I said, it will set the tone for their whole season. So I think projected wins for this Virginia team are between 7 and 10 wins. I think best case scenario, you win every game except for Notre Dame or Miami, or perhaps win one of those games and then slip up, get upset by North Carolina, or lose to Virginia Tech or Pittsburgh or Florida State. I don't really, I was close to putting 11-1 on here, but I don't know if this team's going to be quite good enough to do that. Again, 10-2 would be a great season for Virginia. So I think that's very possible. On the flip side, worst case scenario, they lose the opener to Florida State. They lose to Notre Dame and Miami. They lose to Virginia Tech again, and then maybe they lose to Florida State, or perhaps North Carolina on the road, Louisville on the road, something like that. I think they could fall to 7-5, but I think that's about the worst case scenario. Again, I think with a solid defense, a returning quarterback, and talent around him on offense, this team is good enough to where I would say it's more likely that they win 10 games than it is that they win 7. So yes, if we're gonna look at that and say which is more likely, 7-5 or 10-2, I think 10-2 is more likely. I am very confident in this team. I think because again of that defense and that quarterback coming back for them, I think they'll have a chance to win that Coastal Division. But it all starts with Pittsburgh. If they lose that game, I think they're probably not going to win the division. If they win that game, they might be my early favorite. We'll see how Miami and Virginia Tech look, but that's going to be a really interesting division there. So Virginia, for me, between 7 and 10 wins. If I had to pick right now, I think maybe 9-3 is what I would put for this team. Maybe 8-4, but again, anywhere between 7 and 10 wins in the regular season. That does not include a bowl game or a potential ACC championship game. Just looking at 12 regular season games, I think they finished between 7 and 10 wins. What do you guys think about Virginia? What do you think about this schedule? It's not the most difficult, but it's a decent schedule. You'd like to have a little bit of a tougher non-conference schedule than William & Mary, Old Dominion, and Liberty, but they do play Notre Dame there in the non-conference. They avoid Clemson, avoid NC State, so a pretty favorable schedule again for this Virginia team. Thank you for watching this video. If you are an ACC football fan, please subscribe to the channel. Leave us your thoughts down in the comments below. And for the latest in ACC football, keep it right here.